Hey everybody, welcome to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I'm Ray, and I will be reviewing some classic and contemporary LitRPG audiobooks for you today. So I just want to say thank you for showing up. We're going to dig right in. Got some really great books this week. And again, I apologize. I'll probably say this later on in one of my reviews. I have been overwhelmed with work. Between that and trying to finish up a couple of other things, writing projects that I have going on, which was almost impossible. My work schedule has been insane, and I'm just glad right at the moment I have a moment to catch my breath, throw some words on paper for you later on, record this now, and then get this out for Ramon, because I have not had a chance to sit down and just catch my breath for about 3 weeks. And thankfully I had some shows actually recorded ahead of time, where there'd have been nothing in January at all. So I apologize for the lateness, and trying to keep up, and I'm going to try and get some more of this recorded over the weekend. But until then, enjoy the next several books. No, seriously, they're good. You'll like them. Okay, so our next book, this is a good one, guys. It's 8-Bit Bastards, Levels 1 and 2 by Joshua Mason, narrated by Michael Norman Johnson, no relation, and it has a book length of 9 hours and 47 minutes. See, I'm already laughing. It's got to be good.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. Dracula, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night. Level 1-1, An Old Flame. Sean dropped the controller on the couch, then dried his sweaty palms on his lap. Not that the game was intense. It most decidedly wasn't. Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom was a point-and-click adventure from Hudson Soft, in the vein of Deja Vu or Shadowgate, made all the more awkward by having to play it with a controller instead of a mouse. Sean played as the valiant Sir Cucumber, tasked with saving Princess Tomato from the dreaded Minister Pumpkin. It was a ridiculous game, really, but Sean wanted to play through them all one last time before he died. He was halfway through P on the original Nintendo.
So, Joshua Mason returns more powerful than ever in his new series, 8-Bit Bastards. Personally, I have to say that I look forward to the next books in this series, including the ones that are going to be called 64-Bit Sons of Bitches, and the 11 megabyte Mother... That didn't work. Let me try that again. The 11 megabyte Mother...
Tactical nuke incoming!
Sound guy, you are really not... Let's try that again. I really look forward to the new books, 64-Bit Sons of Bitches, and the upcoming 11 megabyte Mother...
Tactical nuke incoming!
There you go. Sound guy finally got it. Get rid of prop guy, and sound guy sucks. Anyway, seriously, shut your mouth. I really enjoyed Mason's Steam Alley book, the Steam Whistle Alley. But this is one where he seems to kind of find his stride. Now, I'm not saying that Steam Whistle Alley he was struggling or it wasn't a good book, but this one is, you can tell this is one he had fun with, he enjoyed doing, and it was a lot of him coming out in this. He has a substantive strife that is between his party members based on past actions of one of the main characters, as well as the very subject of that strife being the reason for them all to come back together. And that would be the MC's libido. The premise is pretty simple. It's, like an 8-bit game, basically. It's pretty simplistic. People have entered a virtual world where they live out eternity. When your time has come and you're going to go, like the big one, you insert your noodle into this game and you live it out forever and ever and ever. The game kind of fills up, and as it gets full of people, they shut it down so there's no more entrance. I understand that. You can only say I could have so many consciousnesses inside this thing before it would overwhelm the AI or whatever it would be, or the system. So you got to close it up after a bit of time. So in the one that they're in, and I'm sure there's numerous other ones like this, closed up, totally locked down. Now, inside this place, this new virtual world, there are multiple gaming worlds and levels in this gameverse or gameverse. But even that is really not enough to keep the inhabitants from having seen it and done it all after a little bit of time. I know the MC's been in there for a number of hundreds of years, and so is the other people that come up in the story later, and they're kind of all kind of burned out. They're, like, I've learned to play the guitar, I've learned to play the flute, I can sculpt ice sculptures. It's better than Bill Murray and Groundhog Day because they've got nothing but unlimited time, so they can learn to master every single thing out there. And it kind of, gets under their skin. So the problem is there's one place that they have not looked, they cannot go. The one place is the 8-bit realm, and that's because when a player who's been in the other worlds and who enter the world properly goes into this 8-bit realm, it kind of scrambles their senses. It breaks up their brain power, whatever you want to do. It drives them nuts, basically. And the game AI just happens to shunt anybody who gets caught trying to sneak into the game, trying to break into this closed-off world. They get put into that level, and he keeps them locked up there. But it's okay because that's their entrance port. They kind of acclimate to that area pretty well. They don't lose their marbles as the other people that didn't start off there do. So the problem is that they're, even though they're okay with it, they're permanently trapped. They don't get out. The bad news for our heroes is that one of their descendants, yes, because they've been there for 700 years, has gotten himself kind of exiled into that new 8-bit realm that no one can go to. And they have to figure out a way to get there and free him. And that's the premise. And the audio is comprised of 2 books in the series. Now, honestly, I don't know if the books were sold like 1 and 2 together, if it was book 1 and book 2, or how they're going to do this. But here it's combined. So, you get a bigger story, a bigger audiobook length, which is perfect because as much fun as I liked the first book and the second book, if they'd been separated, I don't think it'd have been cost effective or efficient for me to get those books separately, because it would have just been like way too expensive for the amount of time that you would have to listen. So you get a long enough time here, and it's good. It's worth the price point. So I like that a lot. And the whole book is kind of like a fun jaunts and funny as hell spots. There are things that I really liked about the book. Especially I liked the character Nestler, the goofy boatman who calls everybody home skillet and fires finger guns at them. The story, Nestler is just one of these people that he kind of walks in and out of the scene, and if it was a play or a movie, he would totally steal the moment from the other characters, because he just does. He just comes in, just rocks out for a few seconds, and then he's out. Silly or stupid or whatever you want to call it. His attitude and the way he handles himself, it just broke me up. I especially like, the home skillet stuff, because that's when I grew up. They started calling people home skillet, and I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Well, I grew up with it, so this is kind of a throwback to my era of childhood. The story moves along pretty well, and it does a little spotlight on each character as they get through their new classes in the 8-bit realm, because yes, they do find a way to go into the 8-bit realm, of course, and then they have to work their way to their descendant and then get him out. So that's just the way the story works, and I think I enjoyed this book a lot, and I think that it's a cool world to visit. I appreciated that we started off the entire book already in game. I mean, that's really, for me, that's an important factor. I didn't want to have to see them try to get into the game. They were there for 700 years. This is one of those things where I think a lot of times the writers should sometimes start off with the character already in game. I've read enough of these LitRPG books, and I'm sure most of you out there who listen to this have, because you're listening to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I'm sure you listen to Ramon's stuff. You've seen somebody get into a fiver or a diver, or have the full immersion helmet put on, or whatever you want to do. 1,000 times by this point. I mean, it's almost just like, yeah, we know they go in, we know they gotta pick their character stuff out. You skip all that stuff here. It's already done, and the problem is that when they get to the 8-bit realm, they have to do it all over again. They have to earn their classes, and that was the fun part, where they had to go out and do silly stuff as the characters to get these 8-bit levels rather than the level 500s or whatever it was that they were in the other game. And like I say, the team worked together pretty efficiently, which that was nice, even though there was strife. There was a lot of strife with the main MC because of his actions and his libido, the things that he did, and I can understand it. There's a lot of bad feelings there, hard feelings, that he had to overcome, and so that made for good internal issues amongst the team, so there was conflict, and it wasn't just like, well, we have to go bop these zombies in a noodle. It worked out pretty well like that. The story, moved pretty quickly. It felt very distilled. In other words, nothing extraneous was involved. It was pretty much trimmed down to just exactly what we had to have to get this thing moving. No other backstories throw up, no other characters are out there waddling around in the background, none of the outside world stuff. It's all kind of like all right here piled into the one thing, and that's all the focus is on. And there is, I do want to say, there is some intrigue and behind the scenes stuff. So, there's machinations that are going on that keeps things interesting, but it's very minimalistic when it comes into the gaming stuff. It's very, very minimalistic played, and it's just there to kind of keep the story rolling along and keep the story interesting. The only question that really threw me off is that there's a player in the team who, like, really, he's good for taking copious amounts of notes. I mean, like, tons of notes. Like, it's just his thing. Like, he writes everything down. He's very, very meticulous and almost OCD about taking notes. And when his notes are ruined or lost, he gets really upset. And yet, everybody in the game has this thing called a photographic memory, where you totally remember every single detail from the moment you enter that world to the present time. You lose nothing. Now, the things that happened beforehand, well, your memory is just as good as it was when you entered, because, how well do you remember the details of what you had for dinner 3 weeks ago? Probably not very well, but in the game, you do. So, getting upset about notes you've taken already, I don't get it, unless it was just kind of like there for him to just say, okay, I've got these notes, and so somebody can read these notes later and learn something from my effort here. But it would be nothing he couldn't redo precisely. I'm sure he could even redo the whole handwriting exactly how he did it before, because it's all stored in his memory banks. But otherwise, that's the worst thing I've got to pick on. Then this is a pretty good book. Michael Norman Johnson, he does his job. Like I said, there is honestly some really funny parts in this book, and Johnson is half the reason why they work. Now, I'm not saying that he only does half the job, but Mason comes up with it. He gives Nestler the personality, but Johnson fills in that personality with his voice. And if he didn't, it would be like, what's up, homeless? It wouldn't be quite as good. And so, like I said, half that work was Mason's putting that character together, but Johnson takes that other half and he runs with it, and he has a lot of fun. And he brings all the characters to life. He seriously could have stubbed his toes trying to get Nestler right, but he nails the guy's personality and just his voice. And the same with the note-taking party member. And forgive me, I can't bring up his name right off the top of my head because I'm not in the game, and I don't have a photographic memory. But each person has a distinctive voice and personality, even the women. And he does do that very well. I enjoyed his pacing, his inflections. He gave nice subtle hints as to what characters were thinking just through his voice. I think Mason made a really good choice with Johnson. I know with Steam Whistle Alley there was some issues with the narration there. Like I said, there was parts of it where it just kind of it did not sit well in my ears for a while, and then it cleaned itself up. And I think somebody told me, well, I know somebody told me, I knew it was too, that it was because they changed their microphone and that sort of thing in there. Well, here I don't have that issue at all. The audio is very clear, it's crisp, it's clean, and it worked. And here's a disclaimer, just so you know, as I said earlier in the show. As Forrest Gump once said, no No, we are not relations, sir. So when I say about Johnson, something about him, I'm not talking about anybody who's got anything. There's no nepotism involved. Let me put it that way. So he's earned all this good word on his own. And I totally need a Nestler plushie now. I saw that, and that dude is awesome. I give Annalisa Renee, kudos, because she does some amazing stitch work, or however you want to do it, however you want to call it, with the plushies she makes for her authors. And I gotta say, that Nestler dude was really cool. He was cool as hell. And I've never seen a plushie with finger guns. That is totally... Sorry, I'm shaking the camera. I'm laughing so hard I can see it shaking. My leg is shaking the camera. It was just awesome. So, Fibble has what you call competition now. Anyway, my final score is 8 stars. I had fun with the book, which was Mason's intention all along, or why else would he call it 8-Bit Bastards? You will enjoy this too, and like I say, it's a good setup, and like I say, I'm now waiting for 64-bit sons of bitches. I don't really need 11 megabyte mother... I'll stop right there. But yeah, you get the idea, right? Okay, so go out and get this book. It's really fun, and it does bring you back to that Minecraft feel, or the old 8-bit games that I used to play in the arcade, those kind of games, but before they became the home video game systems. It works out really well. It's pretty cool. So go dig it, pretty babies. All right. So next up is The Crafter Legacy by who? Alspan Foster. That dude that co-writes with Blaze Corvin with First Song, and he kind of threw in Cold Blooded. That dude right there. Narrated by Ramon de Ocampo, with a book length of 10 hours and 2 minutes.
For not knowing that they lived in the dirt. His eyes focused on a particular group of 5 orphans. They were the strongest of the orphan factions because they were the oldest and therefore the biggest. And since they were the biggest, they were the most likely to get food to keep themselves big. From the looks of them, Wick guessed most were about 8 or 9 years old. So, a year or 2 younger than him. They were ahead of him on the street, only about 10 paces away. Wick was certain they didn't know he was there. The group's leader was a girl with pale green hair the color of seaweed. That means she has some nymph blood in her, Wick thought. Pale green means either her mother or father was one of the Mar, the Oceanids. While most of the other orphans' eyes flicked nervously across the street like a flock of birds looking for the first worm, hers were steady and wide, taking in the entire scene all at once. A month earlier, Wick heard one of the orphans call her Pebbles. It clearly wasn't her real name, but it was what she was called. None of the orphans shared something as intimate as their real names. Or maybe she was forced to choose.
So, Alspan Foster has been diligently working to better his craft in every single way. Anytime I've seen him on social media, he's talked about new techniques he's picked up or lessons he's learned from other writers. Hell, he gave me some really great advice on characters and their agency in a story. And that was something I notice all the time. I can't even watch a movie and realize whether or not a character actually has agency for what they're doing. And that's what do their actions actually do? Do they have power or do they not have power? Like Indiana Jones, if you watch the first and the third movie, and I only watched the second one a couple times, and it doesn't really stick in my head very well. But nothing Indiana Jones does in in movie 1 or movie 3 has any effect on the outcome of the end of the movie. None. And that's the way it is with agency. So he taught me a really, really great lesson, and I deeply appreciate that to this day, Outspan. I would call you by your real name, but you're Outspan Foster right now. Okay, anyway, he's even got a really good partnership going with Blaze Corvin, and had cranked out some great stuff from the pairings. Like I said, Cold Blooded and oh damn it! I just said the stupid book, not the stupid book. First Song, the First Song book, and he's going to have book 2 come out real soon here. But I'm actually thinking now, and I don't know anything about this. This is just my brain working overtime feverishly. is that he may very well be working in a Veilverse book very soon. He may have something to do with that. And like I said, I've not talked to him about this. I've not talked to Blaze. I don't know them that well anyway, for them to just be spilling secrets to me at all. But I could see Outspan Foster doing a Veilverse book, and I would love to read it because this book has proven to me how great he is. The point is, Outspan Foster has grown tremendously as a writer. And I tell you just now that Crafter has just, in my eyes, kind of put him in the upper echelon of the writers of the LitRPG field. Not that he wasn't a good writer before, but this story really has just made him become one hell of a heavy hitter. Now, here's the way it works. Legacy deals with a young kid named Wick, which is a really good name because this kid is just going to totally kick ass like somebody you watch in a movie, but with a name like Wick. Can't remember who that is. But he's going to run through this book like...
Leroy Jenkins!
Yeah, like Leroy Jenkins. He's going to kick the hell out of this book. Wick makes a sacrifice, thank you, sound guy, that grants him advantages that few people in that world ever have. And here's the best part. He uses his new advantages to slowly and methodically destroy the people that hurt him or has hurt his own people. And he also uses that advantage to make himself stronger over time. That's the whole purpose of what he does. He gives up something that's very, very special in order to make himself stronger and more powerful so that he can make his dad proud and do right by his father who took very good care of him and trained him better than anybody else could have done. And I like that relationship a lot. There's a really good thing. Because as a father of 5 kids, fathers get a bad rap a lot of times. And it goes through no matter what. Because if you think about it, I'm just going to say it like this. If you have kids, if you're a parent and you're a dad, and you say, we're going to go back to visit your parents. Where do the kids say they're going? We're going to grandma's house. I'll guarantee you 90% of the people out there, their kids will say, we're going to go see grandma. Grandpa ain't never talked about. And grandpas are awesome. Grandpas do a lot. And I don't care if that kid is best friends with their grandpa. When they go back home, they're going to go to grandma's house. Men never really get the respect when it comes to the parent-child relationship that they deserve. And I think here, Outspan really shows just how cool that relationship is because Wick never, ever forgets everything his father did for him, all the things that his father has taught him. It sticks in his head from page 1 to the last second of that book, I think. And in many ways, his father is very much a character. He's very real. And he is very active in Wick's life, even long after he's been dead, because I'm not spoiling it, but he's dead at the beginning of the book. That's why Wick is on his own. You'll find out in about 3 seconds of listening. So it's really nice to see that kind of a relationship in the book that's not trod upon or spit upon. It's very well handled and it's lovingly done. So I give him a lot of credit. But anyway, Wick is one of these guys, like I say, that he spends years waiting for his plans to come to fruition. I love treacherous characters like that. And when they set out to make somebody pay, he especially makes them pay. Without giving things away, it may not work out the way he thinks, but it's pretty awesome. So Wick, because of what happens in this one event in his life, he becomes just a little bit OP. But if it is, it's because he made that choice. He knowingly sacrificed something that was really fantastic for him to get that extra power. And it doesn't make him indestructible by any means. He's not invincible. He's not all-knowing. He's not omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. He's none of those things. He's just a kid that has a little bit extra going for him. And I think he handles himself well with the hand he's felt, the hand he is dealt. The story holds your attention completely, and it has some really great powers and abilities, as well as amazing characters ranging from the people that support Wick to the ones that try to destroy him. His underlings and friends are just as interesting as Wick, and I also appreciate the time-spanning qualities that Wick's revenge takes to unfold. It's not something like we're going to get mad at this guy and pay him back now. No, I mean, he takes his time to do it thoroughly. And it's one of those, if you pull this pin out, everything will collapse kind of deal. So he does it very meticulously and very, very efficiently to have things go the way he wants. So, I mean, if you're going to crush somebody, do it right. Take the time and do it right. And it takes years. And I think my favorite scene was where Wick goes to confront the head of the Thieves Guild in his city and unexpectedly gets hit with this sort of Spanish Inquisition. And
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Not even Wick saw the Spanish Inquisition coming. It leads to all kinds of unexpected results. And it was really fascinating in watching the real brains of the city, play games with one another, dodge and parry, stick it, and bob and weave, as they felt each other out. That was really one of the key points for me, especially as the real identities of everybody kind of bubbled up slowly to the surface, despite what they wanted to have happen. Because as smart as Wick is, he's not the smartest guy. And, he might be able to do certain things. He can't hide himself from other people if they're intelligent, and it kind of works out really slickly. And that's like I said, that was one of my favorite things, to see. It was this really good thing as they circled one another and tried to see who had the stronger will. I loved it. It was to me, it was the best scene in the book. Now, you may think, well, the fighting scenes are better, or this or that. To me, it was perfect. And like I say, every scene, even if there's no real fighting, it takes place in that scene. Foster manages to keep you on tenterhooks. It's masterfully done. It's very well written, and it's pretty smooth. To me, this is just one of the books that, like, I think last year, what was it? Dante's Immortality came out. Everybody was raving about Dante's Immortality, but then we haven't had anything else from them. So it just reminds me of that, because this is like a really, really fantastic book. But I know Foster is not just plugging away. He's chipping away every single day, working on something to make his stuff amazing. And this is where it's coming out. Now, my real surprise came in checking out Ramon de Ocampo as the narrator. I actually knew him from the D&D novel, The Stone of Timora. And then I realized I'd listened to him before. He'd also done the Level Up series. And I have to say, I loved him just as much there as he's just gotten better, and he nails it here. Each character was distinctive, easily stood out from the other voices, so that I always knew who was speaking. He was dramatic and serious and added to the fun and humor, so that I think he has only proven that he was the perfect choice for Foster to use. My final score, considering I'd put this up against anything that Dean, Hunter, Corvin, Kraut, and I'm being interrupted here, so give me a second, and Wilmarth, just to name a few characters. I can't lowball this book. It's a great, anything they put out, I would put this up against, because it's just that good. Great revenge tale, amazing characters, and a magic system as well. 8.4 stars. Welcome to the big leagues, Outspan, because you deserve it. Okay, so next book is Endless Fantasy Online, The Phoenix Kingdom by Devin Ausplund. This is why I spoke about Ausplund, because I was thinking about this book when I was reviewing Equalize, and I had Ausplund in my head. Makes sense to me now. So it's written by Devin Ausplund, narrated by David Nelson, with a book length of 9 hours and 13 minutes.
Backstab was the first to unleash his attack this time. 5 daggers went flying from his hand. 3 hit their mark. 1 went wide, and the other landed in the side of another wolf. As soon as the wolves took off toward him, Luke took aim with his arrow, but before he released it, the wolf in the pack's front let out a loud howl. This caused a system message to pop up, causing him to miss his shot. Wolf howl. Weakened debuff added. Pulling his hands away from his ears, he launched another attack at the wolf closest to Backstab. The impact caused the wolf to veer off course and collide with a tree. The wolves stopped and took in the party. One wolf in the rear howled. Wolf howl. Weakened debuff 2 added. We have to stop them from howling. We're going to take too much bonus damage, Penny shouted over the piercing howling noise.
First-timer Devin Ausplund dives into the LitRPG LitRPG genre, and makes a very decent first impression. But he does make me wonder a few things. So here's the synopsis real quick first. While acting as a game tester, Luke Patterson gets stuck inside the game along with every other player by some outside hackers. It's a very familiar event in LitRPG. It's a trope we're all familiar with. So I think, if you're going to go down a well-traveled path, I should put it like that, because it's not just familiar, it's well-traveled. You need to stand out when compared to the other books in that category that do the same things. And I think Osmond walks a really tight line, but he creates an interesting story. Like I say, the trapped in that game motif is not new. There's nothing new to it here. It kind of comes up like every other trapped in a game kind of thing. But the story evens it out. So like I say, if you have an issue with that sort of thing, that could be a problem. But for me, I think it was just part of the story, and it fit right in there, so no big deal. The first thing I'm going to say, and I really want to make this clear as I say this is not a negative thing. I'm going to say something very nice now, and it's not going to be negative in any way, shape, or form, or capacity. This is a family-friendly book. There is something that anyone of any age can pick up and dig into and enjoy, and in no way does it talk down to the reader. So like a teen can get it, like my 10-year-old son could get this book and read it. They can listen to it, and it's not going to feel like you're being talked down to. As an adult, I didn't feel like I was being talked down to. I'm just saying it's family friendly. There's not a lot of swearing in it. Whatever happens. But to me, there's no graphic sex. There's none of this. This was a book I could say I could let my kids listen to, unless I've blotted out something. But I mean, I know I read this a while back. It's been a long time, and I'm trying to write this up, or I'm trying to talk it up, then I'll write this up later. This is one of those things where I remember when I listened to it, I thought, this is something my kids could listen to. And unfortunately, I was working numerous hours, and I was away. So anytime I'm working in a car, or I'm driving somewhere or doing something, that's when I do my listening most times, unless I'm in the prep room. But either way, I'm listening all the time, and I'm not near my family majority of the time. Hell, I hardly ever see my family as it is. So I didn't get the chance to let my kids even listen to a little bit of this, which I wish I could have. I'm just saying my kids could have listened to it and enjoyed it, or as much as I, a grown man, do not feel like I'm missing out on some of the cooler things in lieu of there being a wider audience. Because it was a good story. I really wish that some writers would realize that it doesn't hurt to bring in younger readers. They're the people that are going to pick up and carry on once our first guard, that's us, kind of fades away. If we don't get new readers in, younger readers, then there's not going to be anybody to pick up the books and carry on as time goes on. So you need to suck in some newbies every now and then. The only way this book seemed to be more PG than PG-13 was in the very, very black and white contrast of the characters. And again, I'm not saying this is bad, but this is where I say it's very much. This is where I would say it's an all audience kind of thing, because the bad guys were completely bad. They were completely horrible people. They did all the horrible stuff just because that's the kind of people they were. And the good guys were entirely perfectly good white knights. There did not seem to be a sliver, shade of gray, even amongst the players. It was just one thing. There was just one thing that struck me odd was the way Luke. Well, let me back it up. Anyway, there's really no variety in the characters. So either you're perfectly good or you're perfectly evil. And then that was like really my only stumbling block, was there's not a lot of variance. And sometimes you need nuances with your villains. To have like a pure evil guy is great if you can have minions around them that kind of deflect and defer, their massive misanthropic behavior, which has got no real guideline behind it, by giving them some sort of humanity. And here, there's really none of that. There's no humanity. It's just, I'm pure evil. At least that's how it came across to me. Okay? So that was like my big thing with the book. And like I say, that's it. I mean, if you really want to know, I do have another thing I'll talk about for a second, but really my big problem was just that there was no grading of morality as you go through it. Ethically, you're either this or that. Morally, you're this or that. So it's pretty easy to see what people are going to do just based on the actions they take. And that's a big thing where early on in the book, there's a scene where the group of characters, come to the aid of somebody who is dead. And then they find out that things kind of happen. And when they're asked, like, why did you try to help this dead guy? They're like, well, that was like the only thing we could have done. It was the right thing for us to do. It was the only thing we should have done. It's the only thing that seemed right to us. It was natural. Whereas you could have had a couple people in that party kind of complaining, well, this guy's dead. Why should we go risk our lives for this? Or, this is really none of our business. It's none of our fight. Why would we do this? You didn't have any of that. It was like, you're right. We've got to all go in and do this. It's all in and all out. So that, like I say, that to me, it just didn't quite have that ring that, you need. But again, nothing's perfect. But I have to point that out. Now, the other thing, and this is a bit weird. This is on the weirder thing. And it really struck me odd, is the way that Luke, the main character, is inundated with this information about how hard it is to learn magic. Everybody says it's so impossible. It's hard as hell to get this stuff unlocked, to get your affinities, open and that sort of thing. And just the fact that he has magic and he has unlocked his affinities basically is what gives him a free ride into the guild that he's trying to get into. Now, the weird thing is when it comes time to choose his class, he opts to become a hybrid ranger / beastmaster type, which is fine. I actually liked the character. I liked his bow work, that sort of thing. He's an archer. And I don't see enough of that in main characters. Like, I'm an archer. I like that a lot. But what was really weird was he made that choice based on the impression of the guy selling pets. I don't get it. If you want to have a pet, you can do that. Wizards have familiars. But if you're the guy that has this really rare magic, why not take that route? I mean, I was actually expecting like an Elminster / Gandalf type, to come up. And we wound up with Legolas. And again, I'm not trying to spoil anything. But I mean, if you're going to ask me what was weird about it, we should have had Gandalf and we got Legolas. And Legolas is great. He's a cool guy. He hangs out with dwarves and, walks on top of snow and he's immortal. But it was not what I was expecting, especially after all the hullabaloo, all the hoopla that was made about knowing magic. And then, I think he could have had other people have their affinities unlocked or checked or tested. But it never comes up. He never thinks about doing that for his party members. Like I said, a little weird. But again, I'm just talking about things that struck me odd because I enjoyed the story. So, you would read this and you'd probably go, what the hell? Why didn't Ray say this was that? So I have to say, this is a WTF type moment when a magic class is overlooked from a guy who has this great affinity for magic. Granted, he still had magic and he used magic, but it's more of a wahung. What was that on that, sort of thing. I just didn't get that bit. The story itself, though, well-paced, good characterizations for what they are. It holds your interest without a doubt. It also has a good cast of characters aside from Luke. And it was nice to see characters do the right thing. Just because it was the right thing, even if it was hopeless in a situation for them to succeed. Like I said, even though they knew that the guy was dead, they had to go do the right thing, and they knew they were going to lose, they were going to pay for it. They did it anyway. So, they do the right things, and the outcomes go that route. But just so you know. David Nelson does an okay job on the audio. There were some slight things I picked up on, but my real beef came in the certain voices for different characters. I don't ask a lot, but having the same voice for multiple characters can be a little confusing. Kind of like how Luke Daniels only has 1 or 2 female voices. Nelson gives his all, and I respect him for it. But there's times that voices repeat, and it kind of gets a little confusing. So, like I say, the big thing for me was the audio with the voices. And again, not everybody can house 48,000 voices in their mouth, like say Jeff Hayes, or I'll just say Jeff Hayes, okay? Because Jeff has a bag full of voices in his bag. I just said that. He has a bag full of voices that he can pull out at any moment. Not everybody has that capability as a narrator. And as long as they tell a good story, that's great. And he does. And Nilsson does do a good job telling a story. But like I said, it gets a little confusing. And like I said before, the little staunch, pure black, pure white, the story was good, but I'm taking a couple points off just because of the audio issues. And again, I'm not knocking David Nelson. He did a good job. But when I sit there and go, who's talking? I have to say that there's, like, for me, a bit of confusion, and I have to note that. So my final score is 7.8. It's a fun, family-friendly book. I really would happily listen to book 2. I think you would too. And again, my nitpicking should not deter you. I'm just kind of saying, here's my magnifying glass on the issues that I had with the book, because I did take slight umbrage to the whole thing with the magic. I just couldn't get my head around that. Like, I can say, okay, if everybody has to be a white hat and a black hat, that's fine. But why do all this hullabaloo over this magic stuff and then do what you did? And again, he uses magic anyway. But I think if I had this huge advantage, I would go all in and really become a massive spellcaster and use my powers like nobody else can, because it's a rare thing in that world. But that's just me. So anyway, dig it. It's a good book. And like I say, my shaving off is just shaving off. This is really an 8-point book. But I do have to say I was a little confused a few times listening to it. And that is a pet peeve of mine. I should note everybody who's talking whenever they speak. Should never have a question like that. Okay, but anyway, 7.8 stars. Okay, so we're going to focus on Equalize, a post-apocalyptic LitRPG book, which is part of Ether Collapse, Book 1. It's written by Ryan DeBrun. If I mispronounced that, I'm sorry. I'm terrible at this sort of thing. Narrated by Luke Daniels, with a book length of 15 hours and 31 minutes. So it's a nice, long, thick book. It was a good listen.
Whether it was the middle of the night or high noon, every living creature across the entire planet slept. This was not the typical sleep humans were accustomed to. No, the entire planet had dropped unceremoniously into a pain-induced unconsciousness in near unison mere hours before. The only intelligence that was jarred awake by the wave of cosmic energy from over 1 billion years of slumber was Gaia, what humans called Earth. Gaia awoke slowly, stretching out and feeling her surface. Mental dendrites touched her expansive skies, deep waters, and fathomless depths. She felt wrong, somehow. Everything was perverted. Everything was disgusting. Gaia's waters were filled with flotsam, discarded items of strange configurations, and the surface was strewn with materials in strange alignments. Next, Gaia performed a routine check of her essence reserves, and a rumble from deep in the earth sounded across the planet.
So, what can't I say that isn't good about this book? Not much. I mean, I really, really enjoyed this book a lot. And I think it's kind of comparable to Shadow Sun and System Apocalypse for end-of-the-world style fun. It has an interesting and yet unique, familiar, if that makes sense, uniquely familiar sort of system to it. You kind of know the world's changed from some outside force, whether it's aliens or gods or something else. The world has shifted into like a LitRPG kind of mode, and it also has a very good, enjoyable MC, and that's really important. The seeds of a budding romance are also in here, a cool monster companion, and best of all, yes, you know what I'm going to say next, right? What's one of the things I enjoy most in a book? It's when there's consequences. People die. Yes, they die. There's a lot of people who do meet their maker. They bite the big one. They dance with the Reaper. Doesn't matter whether you're a king or a lowly street sweeper. Eventually, everybody dances with the Reaper. So, especially in this book, I will say this: Run does not pull punches either. He does not go, well, I can't do this because it won't be accepted because, we don't do this to this type of person. Wrong. The mower comes and it mows them down. It doesn't matter. So I like that a lot. And yeah, Osplin, let me see. Osplin. What am I saying? Osplin. I don't know. The Brun doesn't keep things cuddly in his end of the world scenario. And it seems like no one is safe. And that's the way it ought to be. When you write a book like this, it's end of the world. There really need to be high stakes. There needs to be something that says, if this doesn't go well, bad things are going to happen. And I think it's pretty apparent right here. There was only one bit that sort of threw me off, and that was a POV change as we shifted from the MC to another character, just so we could kind of get an update on what was happening back at the ranch, sort of thing. And otherwise, it was pretty smooth and nice. The story starts up in the Great White North, very similarly to the System Apocalypse, and it's in the area of the Algonquin Park. Rocky, the MC, he goes on annual trips there. This time it's Sans, his father, because his partner, which is his dad, who just died. And while he's up there, this ancient earth goddess, Gaia, awakens and reboots the world to the way it used to be before she took this really long nap and kind of got, banged up by the humans that have been here since that point. Suddenly everybody gets HUDs and can level up, and the flip side is monsters appear and start wiping out everybody. And I mean everybody. And the really cool thing is and this is where, Ryan, he takes this in a new direction. You get to see monsters that you don't typically see. Just as an example, 60-foot tall or 60-story tall skyscrapers that turn into golems, as most people call them. You don't see that very often. Watching a pontoon boat or whatever it is shift into, some sort of a fighting monster. It doesn't happen. And that's where I say he takes us in a new direction, but he also has a pretty cool new system of magic and everything else. So the book is original, and like I say, even though it plays into similar tropes, like I say, end of the world things, it stands out. It stands out. Like I say, I would put this right beside Shadow Sun and System Apocalypse, just because each of those have their own unique take on the apocalypse genre, so to speak. And I even, I like to think of it like apocalypse, L-I-T, because it's really not an apocalypse. Apocalypse is the end of the world. It's Armageddon. There's nothing left after it's all done. Post-apocalyptic is the Mad Max style thing. Like, everything has been wiped out, changed. You struggle to survive on the planet. And as much as I love those books, Shadow Sun and System Apocalypse, that's really not a post-apocalyptic world. The apocalypse that they're talking about was not something that radically destroyed everything. It took away a lot of stuff, but the world, it was a change altogether, boom, done. Whereas, you look at Mad Max, the world's gone to hell. That's a post-apocalyptic world in my mind. And so I put this out on a shelf where I say, man, this is really good. It's a new take. Even though it's familiar, it's new. It stands out. It's all on its own. And it's the same thing I'll review at some point in the Soundbooth Spotlight, Transformations. And, I like Transformations a lot, too. It's the same thing. So there's a lot of really good post-apoc kind of books out there in this genre. I love this genre. It's one of my favorite things. I grew up playing. Yeah, I think I say that a lot of stuff, but my childhood was very diverse. I did a lot of different things. I watched different TV shows, listened to different radio shows, had different types of music. I grew up with 40 eras music all the way up until the present day. So if I say I had a very eclectic kind of thing, because I would find things that really stood out to me. Like, I was into Doctor Who before 99% of the American populace knew who Doctor Who was. That's not to say there was a lot of people, but the people that watched Doctor Who, the Whovians, we were few and far between. Like, you couldn't go down the street and say, hey, hell, you got a TARDIS. I can remember, the first time I ever heard of TARDIS, it was in a painting, and I kept looking, and it would say, here's, on number 8 is the TARDIS, and there's this police call box. And I'm thinking, that's a police call box. That's not a TARDIS. And after I got into the show, as I got older, I was like, oh, I remember that, and it drives me crazy that it was there, and I didn't recognize it for what it was. So I grew up, and I say this because I played D&D a ton of tabletop role-playing games. You know, Gamma World was one of those things. Played Star Frontiers to hell and back too. So pretty much anything TSR put out. Then there was a lot of other stuff. I had, what was it? Something 2000. I can't even think off the top of my head. But anyway, you know, 2000 and those sorts of things. All those were things that I was into, and so I was really into, you know, the any kind of book that had that kind of style. And I've never found a really good book that fits my impression of what the post-apocalypse looks like. So, you know, it's fun for me to see other people's ideas and see where they go with this, because apocalyptic is a really great genre. I really like this genre, and getting into it is not easy, because either you do it really well or you fail. And here I think that, you know, the run really just nails this. The writing is tight, it's fast-paced, it's energetic. The characters, most especially the characters, are well fleshed out. And thankfully, not everybody is a likable cuss. There are some a-holes. And as I said, not everybody makes it. So seeing well-developed characters bite it is a nice jolt to the system. And what I also thought was really nice was, like, you'll come across like a point where he's able to do certain things with people as a leader. And you say to yourself, well, he really doesn't like this guy. He's an a-hole. So he's not going to give him this. And then you find out that he does do something with this guy that you wouldn't expect. Because I know if it was me, and I could keep that a-hole away from me as far as possible, that's what I want to do. And I'm going to give this other stuff to these other people. And that's not the way he works it. He looks at it and he goes, hey, I think this guy would fit better here. Even though I don't like this cat, you know, he's going to go here because he'll work better. And I give that a lot of credit, because it's not easy to do that with a character. And that's one of the things I like a lot about Dave Wilmarth. Like, Wilmarth will put a character in a book just so you can hate on that character, and then when they get destroyed, you cheer like a sumbitch. I mean, you're like, yeah, that guy paid for it hard, like he should have gotten it. And, you know, here I give respect, because that's not the way it works. And either way, I'm happy a lot. But, you know, usually it's the a-hole just gets his comeuppance, and that's it. And here we don't see that. So I give a lot of credit. Now, like I said, the concepts that buildings and kayaks can suddenly animate into huge golems is pretty cool. And considering, you know, there's places like New York and Chicago, you have to wonder, what kind of mess would they look like? So we're not getting the big picture. We're getting a really small area, especially it's Algonquin Park. You know, so, you know, these things are some monsters that would make King Kong look like an organ-grinding monkey. I mean, just teeny-weeny. You know, if you think of Kong hanging on the side of the Empire State Building back in the original movie, that'll give you the amount of the scope of the size of what these golems would be like now. And you would have just amazing fights with those things. I just can just see it. And while the story is a sort of slice of life, it doesn't feel like one to me. He has a goal. Rocky has a goal. He's trying to get to his family. And whether he does or he doesn't, I can't reveal that. But it's a journey he has to take, and he makes it. And whatever happens to him along the way happens to him. But he does have a point A to point B that he gets to before he has to turn around and go either to back to A or go to C in order to see what happens. And to me, it didn't feel like a slice of life. It just felt like it was a very natural, organic progression. And you would just say, like, okay, this is what happened to this guy at this time, and you follow it, and it's real. You know, almost like with if you put it up against Lord of the Rings and Frodo and Samwise, you know, they bounce around from one thing to another. It's not a slice of life book. They have a goal, and it just takes them 3 books to get to that point. And it's the same thing here. There's a goal, and whether, you know, once he achieves that goal or he doesn't, what happens after that, that's really the next question. But, you know, does he or doesn't he? I'm not going to reveal that, but wheels are turning, okay? And so, like I say, he has a goal. He just kind of gets ambushed off to the side along the way due to circumstances trying to get there. So things happen. Overall, this is an apocalypse book, like the others I mentioned, that isn't what I consider to be post-apocalyptic. I've said that before. You know, so for me, things kind of go from normal to gamey in a span of seconds. So, it doesn't feel like apocalypse to me, even though it is, the world has ended as we know it, but the world is still there. People are still alive. The animals are still alive. They just mutate or change or adapt. And the only thing I'd have to ask is why everyone has to get knocked out at the beginning of this book in order for that change to take place. There's got to be a purpose for that, other than Gaia wakes up and says, snap, everybody's out, I'm going to reset, there's some things I need to do, and everybody has to be passed out to do that. That was the only thing that didn't make sense to me. And again, I'm really, if I have to be a critic here, I'm going to nitpick. It wasn't reasonably explained to me why that happened or why that had to occur, because it just seemed to me like Gaia could have done that with everybody awakened on their thing, and it was still made no difference. But that's just the way it goes. My only real issue is the MC's non-use of cuss words, swearing, vulgarities, obscenities, whatever you want to call it. Now, I know I often tout family-friendly fare, but I am a man who loves to paint the air with obscene words in new and unusual ways. I really do. And it drives me crazy when someone wants to swear and cuss, but uses stuff like rubber baby buggy bumpers instead, like shut the front porch or shut the front door or go fork yourself. It's okay for a place like the Good Place to pull that off because it's on regular TV. You can't do that on regular TV. You can't say go fork yourself on regular TV and not get a fine. And B, it makes it funnier because they're trying to swear and they can't. Here, again, I'm taking the word of the author who says that there is a reason for that, and it's revealed in book 2, which is fine. But for me, I just say, and the thing is, it kills me is there's cursing in other spots. Just the MC doesn't do it. So, like I say, I'll wait. But that kind of drives me nuts when that sort of thing happens. Either have your characters cuss, or don't have them cuss, but don't use the euphemisms like I say, rubber baby buggy bumpers, or shut the front door, or shut the fork up. Those sorts of things. I would rather just have the swearing or just say, I told him to shut up. That's it. So it just drives me crazy a little bit, and that's like my big nit to pick. Otherwise, it's almost a flawless tale. I mean, honestly, if you look at what happens in there, I didn't have a problem with transitions. I didn't have a problem with OP characters. How Rocky trains himself, how he trains others, how he makes decisions, how he does things. It all makes sense. And it works really well in light of everything that's happening in the background. So, like I say, the background it makes a lot of sense to me too. I really like this book, and I give us like this new progressive system where it kills off like an exterminator huffing a can of Raid. That's how good it is. There's just like this, we're going to whack whoever we can because this is realistic. It was fun from the first page to the last. 8.3 stars. I look forward to bigger and better things in the future. This is really a great series so far. I got to get book 2 ASAP, just because I need to get to this because I enjoyed this book so very much, and I hope book 3 comes out, and I hope it kills because this was a quality style book, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get to it. Like I said, it's been 2 weeks. I was ahead, and I've had at least 3.5 weeks of insanity where I could not get anything accomplished. It was like 1 minute after another. My days were eaten up from 5 a.m. until practically midnight every night. And then I would have things happen in the middle of the night between that 12 and 5. So it was a long time for me to get to this point to be able to sit down and do this. So I'm sorry. And that's just for this video. I've had this book for a long time and I've had it read. Getting to do this has just been insane. So just go out, check this book out. I really, really liked it. Well, silly me, silly little Ray. Guess what I forgot to do? Okay, I'm really, really, like I've told you, I'm trying really hard to get this thing taken care of. And I don't think about what I'm doing. And the very next... The very next thing I do is I skip telling you about Luke Daniels in Equalize. Now, I think you're going to say, Ray, we know what you think of Luke Daniels. And you're right. I think Luke Daniels is a really great narrator. I think he kills it. But I will say this. even now, looking back, I have to say I've had some thoughts about Luke recently because he's done a lot of LitRPG books all of a sudden, and not that he wasn't doing it for like Michael Scott Earl, but he's really hitting a lot, especially with Mountaindale. Mountaindale is using Luke a lot, and which is fine. But I do need to say, having listened to him on Tamer, I was cutting him a lot of slack on Tamer, and I don't think I would do that now. I like Tamer a lot, but retroactively, I begin to see things that are little chinks in the armor, if you want to put it gently. And I'll say it as easily as I can. Luke is a great narrator. He can do humor, he can do everything, but he's not great on female voices. He's got like 2 in his pocket, and they're both pretty close to one another. So if you've got more than one female character in your story, you are going to give him a run for his money trying to figure out how to get this. So he really does a great job, and he tells the story really well, but he just doesn't really, I think he just kind of says, you know what, my voice does not do females, and I'm not even going to try, because if I try, it won't go well. And he's probably right. I think that, I know with me, when I used to read to my kids, every time I did a female voice, it would kind of come out Southern, because I used to read like Henry Reed Inc. to my kids years ago. And if you know Henry Reed, then you're really old, because I don't even think you could find those books today. They're great books, but they're from like the 50s. And, and I had those books, and I cherish them. I would read them today because they're that good. But there was a female neighbor of Henry's, and she always talked like this. She'd say, Henry, I don't know why you got your dog Agony out today. And Agony is just the saddest sounding dog, but he is a beautiful hound, Henry. And, and I would read that in that voice, and it always comes out in that kind of style. No matter what I did, it would always have a Southern accent. And I tried not to do that, because when I read books to my kids, I give everybody a new voice. I mean, everybody. And let me tell you, reading Watership Down, my voice at the end of the night was like this, because I struggled to give 1,000, and I would read in the voice of the characters. So if this really old rabbit spoke for 30 pages, I spoke like the old rabbit for 30 pages, and I paid for it. But it built my voice up. I was able to do that for a long time afterwards. Like I say, I can talk like this all day long, and it doesn't bother my voice. I can go deeper. I can do that, no problem. Talk all day, all night, never have an issue with my throat. Because I've done that for so long. And I can talk like this, and the same thing. I can do this all day long, and never, ever, ever have an issue one time with my voice. So, as we go, I do get things with the narrators, but I just wanted to point out, Luke is great, but he does have a flaw. He does have a minor flaw. But in this book, Equalize, he does a fantastic job. And thankfully, there's not a ton of women, and I hate to sound like that, there's not a ton of female characters for him to have to kind of trip over trying to figure out what to do. So he works it out pretty well. But just so you know, I don't ever take anything off of him just because of that fact. But he doesn't have that kind of stuff in his bag when he goes back and tries to do it. So especially if you listen to the Iron Druid, he really kind of struggles after Granue hits it, because if you have any other female, they either sound like Granue or they have the other voice, and it's just a bounce back. So like I say, Luke's great, and I'm glad that he is working with like Mountaindale Press, because he has stepped up, and he's taken over the reins on a series that would not be easy to take over. And I give a lot of credit to him for that. And he actually took over on 2. He completed the 1, the Divine Dungeon, and he's doing the Completionist Chronicles now. But if you listen, you'll see the same thing there. And I'll say it again the same way. It's just not in his bag of tricks to do female voices. Everything else is there. And like I say, no one's perfect. We all have our faults and flaws. So, as you go through it, just remember that, Luke is human, but he's good. He's good. But he can't do a lot of females. Well, he could do a lot of females. I'm just talking about doing female voices. Remember that. I'm sure Luke does a lot. Well, I'm going to just shut up before I get in trouble. Okay. Sorry I had to have this addendum put on there, but today's Soundbooth Spotlight is brought to you by the letters W and O. And W again. Whoa! It's Live Reset, Hobnobbing. Book 3 of the New Era Online by Shemmer Kuznets. Narrated by who? Who? Am I an owl? No. Jeff Hayes, Lori Catherine Winkle, and Annie Ellicott, with a book length of 15 hours and 23 minutes, which is really a lot shorter than the other 2 books. I'm surprised.
Tenrigan's face became ashen as he looked at us. You'll be facing both the champion and his manticore. So it seems, I said grimly. Manticores were monstrous flying beasts, bigger than horses, with a body of a lion, bat wings, and a long tail with spikes that could be launched from afar. It was a fitting mount for a ranged champion. An earth-shaking roar sounded as the portcullis opened, revealing a huge flying beast. It soared to one of the tallest stone pillars and latched onto it, its sharp claws digging deep into the stone as its long, spiked tail swung freely. Stepping through the gate behind it was Barbed Wire himself. He wore thick leather armor laced with magic and held a long black rod. As the crowd roared, calling out his name, the champion shook the rod and 2 extra limbs sprang out, transforming it into a fierce-looking bow.
I must say, I was very slightly surprised. Very slightly? Mostly slightly. No. I was very friggin' surprised that this book ended the series. It was out of nowhere. It ended. It's done. It's over. What? I never saw this coming. I thought this was going to be like a 5-book series or maybe a 7-book series. I was expecting a lot longer series. 3. It's a trilogy. Oh, I'm so shocked, stunned, and happy, and then sad at the same time because it ends the stuff. But it does have an ending that kind of leaves things open for later if we want more. I want more, Shemmer. More. Okay, anyway. I literally had no idea that this was going to be the last novel as I listened to it. None. And while I'm glad I get some closure, I'm sad to see this end. This is a damn good series, and I am going to miss the hell out of it. Want to know what shocked me the most was how long the first 2 books were compared to the wrap-up. I mean, the first book was like 24 plus hours, and the second book was right in that same ballpark. Thankfully, even though it's a shorter novel, it doesn't really feel truncated. It doesn't end all that flowery either. It's not a big flower garden. I like that a lot too. I like realistic endings. And man, I give Shemner just credit because like to end it the way he does, he wraps up stuff, but he also has there are consequences for things that have happened to the MC. Oren goes through hell, and every time he does something, he pushes the boundaries. It has effects on his brain, and he knows that's a possibility. So I won't say what happens to him at the end, if it's him that has the consequences, if it's somebody else, if it's a lot of people. There's a lot going on here. In fact, the shortness of the book was a shock because I kept thinking as I was listening, there was more to come. There's more to come. We're going to have a lot of stuff fleshed out. In fact, I wondered several times how anything was going to be resolved since the other 2 books were over 24 hours in length. Now, needless to say, Kuznets pulls it off plausibly and entertainingly, and that's the most important thing. Sadly, aside from some liberties taken with a certain shadow, no torture takes place in this book at all. So, anyway, the story is set, for the most part, in Hobgoblin City, hence hobnobbing. That isn't too kind on non-hobs, and outsiders are treated with less than a modicum of respect. So they're really not batting 1,000 when they step into the gates, let alone, getting into the higher tiers. Oren and his team need to establish a trade route in order to help his village survive. The upcoming storm or surge, if you want to put it that way, of players. And along the way, we get arena fights and backstab deals and some new friends and a conclusion to the guy versus the world saga that's been building since book 1. I'm not going to tell you who wins. You might be surprised. Anyway, I have to say, that I like the series did not end on a super happy note, and that there were still some questions that needed answered. And it does leave the door open for further novels in the future. The ending for what happens with the MC is pretty realistic, and in a gritty series where he kept pushing boundaries, I'm surprised he didn't end up pushing daisies instead. So, push boundaries, you push daisies. And Oren, he gets away with a lot of stuff. My only complaint is that this book seems to, maybe it was rushed to the finish line. Honestly, I was expecting like 7 books, like I said earlier. And for some reason, about midway through, it seemed like Schemmer decided he just kind of had enough and wanted to start wrapping up plot points, which is fine because it didn't take away or detract from the story. But it was kind of like, what happened? Why did you decide to do this all of a sudden? Just crank this out in 3 books rather than going a little further. Again, I'm happy it's a trilogy. I'm really glad it's done, and we do have answers for things, and there's an opening to come back if we need to. I don't know. There was just certain things that kind of, I was like, what happened? The whole book just took my breath away in spots. I mean, I was just like, what was that? Where did this come from? And it was a lot to do with the ending and things like that. So I was just very pleasantly surprised with it. I give it 8.2 stars for a strong finale. It could have been more. Where several things as readers we wanted to know, but we never get answers to. But you're not always supposed to know everything. Real life isn't about getting all the answers. Sometimes you have to have questions. Sometimes you need to come up with the answers on your own. Or sometimes they go back to the book and answer those other questions. So, and again, I don't want to give anything away, and that's the hardest part, is if I gave you spoilers, I would say, well, here's what happens with his in-game wife. Here's what happens with the other players. Here's what happens with... I can't do that, because if I tell you that, then it's going to spoil everything. Because the ending kind of concludes on a lot of stuff all at once. So, everything kind of happens in the last couple seconds of the book. And anything I give away is going to spoil. And I'm not going to do that. I am like River from Doctor Who. That's all I'm going to say. River Song and me, spoilers. I try not to do it. But the book is totally worth it. And I'm hoping that, Schemmer, I think he started another spacey kind of book. And I know he had released an audiobook, but then he was like, I'm going to go to SBT to redo this. So I don't know what happened there, if it was just, it wasn't doing well as an audio as much as he thought it should, or what. But I'm waiting for that to happen. So I really can't wait to see that come to fruition. So, and hopefully maybe he'll finish that series and then move back to this and kind of come back and, get Oren back to where he needs to be and things like that, so that we can get back into the realm where he is the monster player. But anyway, again, I just want to say thank you to Schemner for really rocking the house with this. Jeff Hayes, Jeff Hayes, Annie, and Lori just nailed this. Their narration is just amazing. I don't think I've heard anything bad come out of them, and this is like a trio again. It's like a trifecta. I've probably said that in another recent review I did, but it is. They're a powerhouse. They are the triangle of power. I'm not going to do a heart thing like that, but because I don't do that. But they're the triangle power. They are the pyramid top. They're the tip top of the pyramid. Mysterious and powerful. Everything about this book just kind of just sang to me, and I loved listening to it. The girls especially, and I don't want to sound derogatory when I say that, but the girls just kicked ass in this the whole way through. Jeff just kills everything they do. I mean, everything he does, he just kills it. I mean, the guy is a horse. He steps in and he is swinging a sword from the first line to the last line. He goes to battle every single novel he reads. I love listening to him do his voices, and just tell the story with his tones. And like I say, Annie and Lori, man, they bring this book home like you just don't believe. So, Soundbooth is never a letdown. And in fact, for me, anything that Soundbooth puts out, I'm thinking it's perfect. because they pick great books, they pick great series, and they do an amazing job. And this was like a nice pure style book. I didn't hear music in it and things like that. This was just straight narration that just knocked things out of the park for the most part. And that's the way I think it ought to be done. I just loved it, and I just say that they killed this book. So, like I say, 8.2 stars. It is what it is. It just seemed like it was rushed, but 8.2 stars. Well, everybody, I'm really sorry, but that's the end of the show. That's all I have for you this week. I wish I could do more. Really do. Really, honestly, I do. I wish I could do more for y'all. But time conspires against me. And I can only put so much into one show. You can only read so many books. If a book requires 24 hours to listen to, that's a whole day I have to listen to it. And I can't do it all at once, unfortunately. So, unlike reading, I could read books 3 times faster than I listen to them, and I'm not going to speed up my books. I'm going to enjoy them. So I get as much in as I can for you. But for now, that's all I have. Just a few quick announcements. First, you can follow us, as always on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. So remember that. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the show this week. And, like I say, as always, please, 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 leave a message down below and let me know what you think. And again, I apologize for the lateness of this video. I try to keep up with everything. Time has just been against me lately, folks. And I'm trying really hard to get all this done. So thank you very much for listening. And as always, leave a review for any book you have listened to or read. It is the author's bread and butter, and it is a necessary thing for them to have done. So if you like it, like an author series, or you like a book, leave a review, because the more reviews they get, the more it shows up on their Amazon's algorithms, and it says, hey, this book sells, so let's put it out there for other people to see. And then that author makes more money, and then they can make more writings. So as they say, more writings makes more happy people. And that's the way I look at it. So the more they write, the better they are, and the better you are. So leave reviews. Otherwise, I'm just going to say, keep listening.